And one of the many accomplishments of EDC was the development of the Economic Development Strategy, which was a collaborative effort between many stakeholders. What is the Economic Development Strategy? Well, it's basically a vision that reflects the desired future of the town. The strategy acts as a map which helps guide the EDC towards your economic vision. It is the chicken soup of the soul. It is the Coles Notes for the EDC. So what has been accomplished in those 17 months since I started working with the town of Shelburne? Well, the first thing I did was a mini business retention and expansion survey. I surveyed 49 businesses in the town of Shelburne, and from that, we basically came up with a list that supported our economic development strategy. And some of those discussions that I had with the businesses, it was clear that there was definitely a need for certain actions to take the forefront. So one of those actions was to develop a new website. So in 2018, one of the things that we'll be working towards is a new website. We received funding from the government to assist with the new website, and the website will bridge and share ideas with the community and develop a better understanding of the needs within the town. It will increase transparency and anticipate the needs of a growing community. The other issue that came about was the development of what we're going to call the Community Improvement Plan. We also received funding, again, a grant that was applied for, and we were successful. And we will be conducting a Community Improvement Plan that will be completed in 2019. The Community Improvement Plan will develop growth management, intensification strategies, design guidelines, and policies to help development activity throughout the community and downtown core, connecting our communities. Over the past 12 months, we have welcomed 24 new businesses into the town of Shelburne. Facebook, which originally, when I started, had 96 followers, now has 1,248 followers. Today, you're going to hear more about Shelburne's next steps. The Dufferin Board of Trade, Shelburne Police Services, our new CAO, Denise Morrissey, will be our first speakers. You also have the opportunity to ask our panelists questions. And you're going to hear from Pierre Cloureau from EDC, who will give you an overview of the Canadian economy. And at the end of the seminar, you'll have the opportunity to participate in what we call our bonus seminar on how to effectively manage social media for small businesses with Radina Montgomery from RAM Media. Before I introduce our first speaker, Denise Morrissey, CAO, I would like to take the last remaining time to introduce the Shelburne EDC. If all the EDC members could please stand. Mike, you've met. Mike Fizzackerly, who's our chair. Steve Bowles, who's our vice chair. Linda Amore Grant, Tammy Austin, Walter Bonato, I'm not sure Walter's here, Brian Besley, Sharon Grant, Shane Hall, and Wade Mills. These are Shelburne EDC members. So I'd like to invite Denise Morrissey to come up and say, she's just going to say,
Carol, Bill Gillen as well. Come on, you're not that easy, Bill.
and Bill Gillen.
So good morning. I just should clarify I'm not a speaker. I'm here to say hello and indicate that I'm thrilled to be part of the town of Shelburne. I joined the team on the 26th of February. I've come from another municipality where I was CEO for 5.5 years. The growth of this community, the dynamic engagement processes that you're undertaking, all of these things are something that is going to guide us as we go forward together. I look forward to working with the businesses, especially because you play such a key role in our strategies on where we like to go. I congratulate the committee for yet another successful event. It's a testament to the community spirit of this place, and there's probably nothing better than seeing a group of people get up this early in the morning to enjoy breakfast together. So congratulations to the committee. I look forward to working with the businesses, and this is going to be a phenomenal year for all of us. Take care.
And now I'd like to ask Liz Skorsky. She's going to speak about Dufferin Board of Trade.
Thanks, Carol. Good morning. My name is Liz Skorsky. I'm a business owner and a longtime member of the Dufferin Board of Trade. I'd like to share with you what being a member of the Board of Trade has done for me professionally. Back in 2004, I started my business in Burlington, Ontario. I had spent years developing clientele and contacts. But in 2011, we moved our family to beautiful Amaranth to live in the country. That's all great, but after the move, I was able to continue working with my city clients, but I had to develop some clients locally. I had no support system, no clients or associates here. I immediately contacted the local Chamber of Commerce, which is now the Dufferin Board of Trade. Upon making contact with the Board of Trade, I was informed of the many benefits of membership, including affinity programs to save money on business services, networking opportunities, group insurance, online business directory listings, member-to-member discounts, and more. I thought this sounded great. So I became a member shortly after. I then attended a new member orientation event. That one event really kick-started my networking connections here in Dufferin. I immediately began to attend monthly meetings for Dufferin Women in Business. Networking locally allowed me to meet and connect with businesses all over Dufferin. In such a close-knit community, it's essential to meet and get involved with community and business activities. Over the years, the connections I've made have become an invaluable referral network for my business. I was able to maintain my pre-move sales and increase clientele locally. The Board of Trade is the voice of business, a strong, trusted, and experienced advocate for the business community. So what does the Board of Trade actually do for me? It facilitates events for me to network, provides opportunities in committees like Dufferin Women in Business, Dufferin Young Professionals, and the Ambassador Committee. It keeps me informed of policy and legislation changes through the newsletter Business in the County. Gives me credibility and status by being a member. Provides discounts on educational events with partnerships like Small Business Enterprise Center. And importantly, they encourage people to do business within this community by helping people realize that their Think Local campaign draws attention to keeping business here. If not for the Dufferin Board of Trade facilitating network events, I would not have had the opportunity to connect and build a strong referral network. I'm currently a director and a longtime member of the Dufferin Board of Trade, currently chair of the Dufferin Women in Business, and I encourage you to reach out to the Dufferin Board of Trade, visit their website at dufferinbot.ca to find out more. Thank you.
And I'd like to invite Corey Courtney from the Shelburne Police Services.
You guys can hold your applause then. Should have sat a little closer to the front.
All right, my name's Constable Courtney with the Shelburne Police Service. Been asked to give a brief rundown on what's called SEPTED. What's that do? If they start playing the walk-off music, radio. So what is SEPTED? Essentially, it's crime prevention through environmental design. If you look in front of you, I've printed off a little sheet that has a little bit of information on there. Chief doesn't know I printed them off in color, so let's just keep that between us. Essential thing to get SEPTED in your head is the SAT test. Surveillance, will I be seen from a criminal perspective? Access, can I get in and out? And territory, does anyone care what happens here? Basic key to SEPTED is striking a balance between these three things. Too much surveillance and you feel like you're on the Kardashian show. Too little and no one can see if your front door's been kicked in. Too much access, and of course that comes with its own issues. Too little access and it looks like a penitentiary. So, and territory, I mean, you can sit out front with a shotgun and that really sends a strong message that you care about what happens to your property, but you might get a visit from some of my co-workers. So the idea is just simply striking a balance between all three things. You know it when you see it. If an area looks run down, lots of graffiti, stuff like that, doesn't have any natural surveillance. And just one example to get through real quick, a really good SEPTED initiative, and I don't even know if they knew they did this, was the arena. We get constant calls, well not constant, but quite often calls every summer for kids up on the roof of the arena. It's super easy to get up there, a little boost onto one ledge and another boost and you're on the roof. It didn't look good. They renovated it, they added to it, it was way more aesthetically pleasing, and now I don't know if we've gotten any calls for kids up on the roof now, because not only does it look good, but it prevents people from getting up there. And that's it. If you have any questions, Sergeant Newman's at the back. So if you want to give us a shout, if you want a SEPTED evaluation, I can certainly swing by and see if there's anywhere we can improve on your business. Okay, thanks.
Okay, Pierre Coureau is our next speaker. Pierre is the Vice President of Research and Chief Economist. Pierre Coureau is appointed Vice President Research and Chief Economist at BDC in 2012. Pierre leads a team of experts who analyze economic data to identify business and sector trends impacting Canadian entrepreneurs. A seasoned speaker, he regularly travels across the country to help business owners understand the risks and opportunities presented by economic environments. Over his 25-year career as an economist, he has held several influential positions that had a direct impact on entrepreneurs in Canada and abroad. Before joining BDC, he occupied senior policy roles in Saudi Arabia and with the Quebec government. He has also spent 12 years at the Canadian Federation of Independent Business in various roles. He holds a bachelor's degree of arts and a master's degree in economics from Laval University, as well as MBA from MIT Sloan School of Management. Wow. Please join me in welcoming Pierre Clouro.
Thank you. Thank you for your introduction. Good morning. It's very good to see so many people so early to talk about economics. So that's really refreshing, and that's a sign that this town is very, very dynamic. So what I would like to do this morning is I would like you probably hear on the media that things are going pretty well. Like the Quebec, the Ontario, and the Canadian economy, they're both going pretty well right now. So what I would like to do is to show you why we have this period of growth and why we believe that this period of growth that we are having now is actually going to continue for a while. We are actually in the middle of a period of growth, and we believe that this growth is going to be sustained for a while. So my presentation has three parts. First, I'm going to talk a little bit about the world economy, because as you know, both the Ontario and the Canadian economy, they are both very open economies to the world. So what's going on around the world is having an impact here. Second, I'm going to focus on Ontario. And finally, I'm going to talk about 4 factors that you should watch for as business people for 2018. 4 very important factors. So first, let's start with the world. The world economy is actually growing. It's actually growing faster than it has been growing for the last 5 years. And the most important reason for that is commodity prices has been increasing last year. Here you have a graph on oil, but oil is not the only commodity. Metals and minerals, all the commodities around the world have seen their price increasing. As a result, countries were producing commodities like Brazil, Russia, they got out of the recession last year. Even Canada, we were not in a recession, but the fact that the oil price came back last year really helped the Canadian economy. So as a result of these economy producing commodities that are improving, the world economy is actually having strong growth. We have what we call synchronized growth. For the first time in many years, there's no recession around the world. Every single major economic bloc are going in the right direction. They have positive growth. We haven't seen that for a very long time, which is a good sign for the world economy. So for example, Europe is getting some momentum. It's growing faster for the first time since the last recession. Emerging countries like China and India continue to have strong growth. I know China, its growth is 6.6%. We used to see 9 or 10% growth in China, but the Chinese economy now is so big that it wouldn't grow at 10% anymore. I'll give you an example. Last year's growth in China was 6.8%, but the growth for 1 year was the equivalent of the entire Canadian economy. So that's how big China is now. And 6% growth in China is still a lot of growth. So the world economy is growing, but I think you will agree with me that the most important region for us is the United States. 75% of Canadian export are going to south of the border. 85% of Ontario export is going to the United States. So the United States is a very important player. It's our #1 trade partner here in Ontario and in Canada. And news are good. The growth is accelerating in the US, and the most important reason for that is the tax reform. As you know, Mr. Trump was successful to convince the Congress to go ahead with this tax reform. It's going to reduce tax this year for $150 billion. So that's a lot of money, and the fact that he's putting back this money with consumer and businesses, this is going to stimulate the US economy. A US economy that was already running very strong. The unemployment rate in the US is 4.1%. That's the lowest unemployment rate since the year 2000. So the US economy was already growing at full capacity, and now we have this tax reform that is going to help the economy still. So the question in the US is not so much, are they going well? Well, they are going very well. The question is more, how long they can sustain this growth. After 7 years of growth, which is kind of a normal cycle, how long can you keep this growth? Well, this is a very tough question. But most economists believe that they are going to be able to maintain this growth for a few years still. Two reasons for that. First of all, there's no imbalance in the economy. There's no housing bubble, just like the last recession. The consumer debt ratio is still very low. Business confidence is still very strong. So there's no imbalance in the US economy. And also, they are in a very good position right now because they have low inflation and low interest rate. On this graph, you see in dark blue the inflation rate, and in light blue the interest rate. As you can see right now, we are in a period of very low inflation and low interest rate. It means that even if this pressure on prices, the Federal Reserve, the central bank, will be able to increase interest rates slowly and maintain this growth for some time. So the consensus among economists is this growth that we're seeing in the US is going to be sustained for another 2 or 3 years before we see a slowdown. And this is important because it does have an impact here in Canada and in Ontario because we export a lot to the US. So this is a pretty good outside environment for both Ontario and Canada. The world economy is growing. Our #1 trade partner in the US is growing as well. The dollar is low, interest rates are low, commodity prices are increasing. So our outside environment is actually pretty good. It should help us. And actually it did last year. This is the growth for Canada. Last year's growth was 3%, best growth that we have seen for decades. And the reason is everything went in the right direction. We exported more. Businesses invested more. The housing market was strong. Consumers spent more money because we created more jobs. And as a result, we had very strong growth. We expect to see growth this year, very solid growth, over 2%, but not as strong as last year, just because interest rates are increasing. So we believe the housing market is going to slow down, and also consumption is going to slow down. But still, in Canada, we will have a strong growth. And we will have growth in every part of the country. For the first time in 5 years, there's no recession in Canada. Not a single province is going to be in recession. Every single province is going to have positive growth. Some provinces are going to have more growth. For example, British Columbia is going to lead the country. Ontario is going to be one of the leaders as well with 2.1% growth. So we see a lot of provinces with more than 2% growth, which is really good for the country. So let's focus on Ontario. Ontario economy has been performing very well over the last 5 years. We had 4 years of 2.5% growth or more. That's really spectacular. This is actually better than the country, better than Canada. It's actually better than the United States. We had more growth in Ontario than in the United States over the last 5 years. Actually, if you look at the G7 countries, the 7 most developed economies, no country can match this picture here. So the growth has been very strong. And we believe growth is going to continue to be strong, but not as strong as over the last 4 years. Growth in Ontario is expected to be around 2%, a little bit lower than what we have seen in the past. And there's 2 reasons for that. Export continued to be strong, but it don't increase. We're not going to see support from export for growth as much as in the past. Also, the housing market is starting to rebalance, it's starting to slow down, and this is going to have an impact on the economy. So if we look, for example, export volume has been very high, but it's starting to slow down a little bit, just because the Ontario economy is running at full capacity. We cannot hire more people. I'm going to show you that the unemployment rate is very low right now. It's hard to find people. So that's one of the reasons why our export is not keep increasing. So that will have an impact on the economy. Business investment are increasing. Over the last few quarters, we see much more confidence in the economy from Ontario business people, and as a result, they are investing more. And our own research is showing that this year, we're going to see more investment. And government is spending more money. Over the last 3 years, the Ontario government, as you know, has been spending more money, and this is helping the economy. We often forget about it. And if we look at the last budget, well, they are planning to spend even more money in the next 4 years. Of course, as you know, there's an election coming up, so I don't know if this government will stay in power, but if they do, they are going to increase spending and this is going to help the economy. And consumer spending has been very strong. The Ontario economy has created a lot of jobs over the last 12 months, and as a result, people are spending more money, and they are creating more economic activities. The housing market is slowing down. Last year, the number of sales of houses in Ontario has declined, and we are expecting the same this year. The economy is still strong, and the housing market is still strong, but it's not going to be as growing as we have seen over the last few years. The housing market is basically rebalancing. So for example, the housing start is going to be strong, but it's not going to increase compared to last year. After 3 years of strong growth, we are starting to see a rebalancing in this sector. So housing start is going to be high, but not as high as last year. Interest rates are increasing. New rules for first buyers have changed, are a bit more restricted, and that's explained the reason why we're not going to see the housing market as strong for this year as we have seen over the last few years. As a result, job creation has been very strong. But since the beginning of this year, we have a pause in the economy. We have a pause in job creation. That's a sign that we are running at full capacity in the Ontario economy. And as a result, the unemployment rate is 5.5%. This is the lowest unemployment rate for Ontario ever, since we calculate the unemployment rate this way in 1976. So that's a very, very good record. Ontario is not unique. That's the case also for the Canadian economy. In Canada, we have the lowest unemployment rate, and that's the case for Quebec and British Columbia as well. So that's a sign that the Canadian economy is performing quite well. But in Ontario, as we can see, the unemployment rate really declined over the years because the Ontario economy has created a large number of jobs. So now we are really at the top of our game. So what should we expect for next year? Well, we expect solid growth, over 2%, but not as much as over the last few years, just because the housing market is not going to contribute to growth as much as in the past. And also because the export has been really level up, so we're not going to see an increase in export. But overall, this is a very good picture. We are in the middle of a growth period, and we believe that this period is going to be sustained for another 2 or 3 years. So this is a pretty good picture for both the Ontario and the Canadian economy. But it doesn't mean that we shouldn't be vigilant. We shouldn't watch for a few things as business people. Actually, we believe at BDC that there's 4 factors that we should watch for. First, interest rate. Second, the renegotiation of NAFTA that you see in the news all the time. Third, technology is changing very rapidly. And finally, the fact that we have an aging population and its impact on the labor force. So let's start with interest rate. Like I've been showing, both the Canadian and the US economies, they're performing very well. And as a result, we are expecting to see interest rate to increase. In the US economy has been performing at full capacity for a while now. And we are starting to see interest rate to increase. Since the beginning of this year, we have seen the first increase, and we believe that the Federal Reserve is going to increase interest rate 2 or 3 times by the end of the year. The economy is performing so well that they want to keep this growth, but they don't want to see inflation. So that's the reason why they're going to increase interest rate. In Canada, the Canadian economy is performing well, not as well as the US, but we expect to see an increase in interest rate by the end of the year. Actually, the Bank of Canada is going to announce today if they are going to increase interest rate today. I don't have any secret, but I believe that they're going to pass. I don't think they're going to increase interest rate today. But we believe they are going to increase interest rate at least once before the end of the year. So in Canada, we should finish the year at the prime rate 1.5, and in the US at 2.25. So as business people, we have to understand that the cost of borrowing is going to increase during the year. And this is going to have an impact also on our consumer. But at the same time, these levels are still low. Like if we finish the last, for example, before the last recession, the prime rate in Canada was 5%. So these interest rates, although they are increasing, they remain quite low in a historic perspective. But they are going to have an impact on the dollar. Our dollar today is at 80 cents, and we believe the dollar is going to stay quite low, which is helping our exporters. And there's two reasons for that. Interest rates are going to increase faster in the US than in Canada, which is putting pressure down on our dollar. Also, the uncertainty around NAFTA is keeping our dollar lower. So that's the reason why we believe that the dollar is going to remain around 80 cents for the rest of this year. So if you are an exporter, that's a very good news. If you like to spend your holiday in Florida, well, that's not such a good news. You have to wait a little bit more. The second factor I want to talk about is NAFTA. And again, I don't have any secret. I cannot tell you exactly what is going to be the end of the negotiation. But I want to make two comments. The first one is, we remain very optimistic that at the end of the day, we're going to have a deal. And the second comment I want to make is, if there's no deal, I'm going to show you what will happen. And this is nothing to be worried too much about. So the first comment is, why are we optimistic? Well, we are optimistic because of this graph. This graph is showing you the US trade deficit by countries. And as you can see, the biggest trade deficit they have is with China, $375 billion. So that means that Americans are buying from China for $307 billion more than they are selling to China. Americans have also an important trade deficit with Japan, with Germany, and also with Mexico, of course. If you look on the other side of the graph, you see the trade deficit with Canada, which is $17 billion, which is basically not much if you compare it to China, or even to Germany, or to Mexico. So I'm asking you, if you are an advisor to Mr. Trump, you want to reduce the trade deficit, where would you focus? Would you focus on Canada? Or would you focus somewhere else? That's the first reason why we are optimistic. We believe we're not a problem. If they really want to reduce their trade deficit, they have to focus on somebody else. And basically that's what they have been doing lately. They have been talking a lot about China, for example. That's really where they can make some gain. The second reason why we're optimistic is because we are an important market for Americans. Actually, we are the #1 export market for 42 states in the United States. That's the reason that our politicians and also our people who work for the government, they didn't go only to Washington to convince people, they went to all these states to explain how important Canada is for American businesses in the United States. Americans are exporting more to Canada than to any other country in the world. We are the #1 trade partner. Americans are exporting more to Canada than to China, Japan, and England altogether. So that's the second reason why we are optimistic. We are an important market. Yes, we export a lot to the US, $400 billion a year. But we do import a lot of products and services. The trade between Canada and the US is very balanced, and that's the reason why I believe we're going to have a deal at the end of the day. It's a tough negotiation, but we should have a deal at the end of the day. However, as any good business people, we look for the plan B. What happens if there's no deal? So we wanted to understand that. We wanted to understand better the situation. And actually, if there's no free trade agreement between Canada and the US, we are falling down on what we call the WTO, the World Trade Organization Rules and Tariff. This is an international organization that rules trades between countries without free trade agreement. And in Canada, if there's no free trade agreement, the average tariff for Canadian businesses to export to the US is 2.2%. So that means that a lot of these tariffs are actually zero. But if that means that if there's no free trade, Canadian companies will have to pay 1, 2, or 3, 4% to export their products to the US. In most cases, these tariffs are very small. So the reality is, if we don't have a free trade agreement, it's not going to be the end of the world. Actually, today, 40% of Canadian exporters are not using NAFTA because the tariff was so small, they just avoided to avoid the paperwork. So that's the second point. That's the second very important point about free trade. We believe there's going to be a deal, but if there's no deal, this is not going to be the end of the world. We'll continue to export to the US. And by the way, the WTO, which kind of put rules for every country around the world on trade, was put together by Americans. They thought at that time that trading was good. So unfortunately they have changed their mind, but they are big traders. And at that time, they are the one who wanted to put this organization together. The third point I want to make is technology. And you might find surprising that in an economy book I'm talking about technology. And the reason is, at BDC we're looking about how the economy is changing for the next 12 months, 24 months. We also like to understand what is going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years. And we believe that technology is the single most important factor that is going to change our business environment in the next decade. It's going to change many sectors of our economy. As you know, technology is changing very rapidly. Actually, it's changing more rapidly now than any time before. And the reason is the power of our computers is doubling every second year. So that's the reason why we're talking about artificial intelligence, because our computers now are so powerful that we are able to do that now. And consumers are really quick to adjust. 90% of Canadians are buying online today. That's just amazing. But businesses are not adjusting as quickly. Only 40% of Canadian retailers are selling online today. And it's easy to understand because for consumer, they believe that technology will help them. For businesses, they have to invest. They have to change the culture inside the business. Sometimes they have to change their business model, so it's much more complicated. But as consumers are adopting technology very quickly, we will have to make this change. And that's the reason why we believe that technology is going to disrupt many sectors of our economy. For example, it's changing the retail sector drastically. The online business is increasing by 15% every year. And it's very tough for retailers to adjust to that. Two good examples is Toys R Us and Sears. Who would have believed that these two very major companies will go bankrupt because they couldn't adjust to the new technology? Same thing in manufacturing. The number of robots used in manufacturing is going to quadruple in the next few years. Actually, some experts believe that in 10 years, producing here in Canada or in China will be the same, because technology is taking away the wage difference between those two countries. The good news is we have a strong manufacturing sector in Canada, so if we invest in technology, we will gain market share over the years. So technology is changing many sectors of our economy. Another good example is oil. Anybody remember that 15 years ago, some experts, some economists said that we wouldn't have enough oil by the year 2020. Today we have so much oil in the world that the price dropped by 60%. And the reason is technology has really changed the game of that industry. They are able to produce much more oil today at a much cheaper price. Technology is really helping them. So technology is going to change many sectors in the economy. So the question for business people is how technology is going to change my sector, and how technology is going to change my business in the next 5 to 10 years. This is going to be very important. If you have to understand how this is going to change to be able to adjust to this new reality. The last factor I want to talk about is how our aging population is changing our labor force. I just talked about how technology is changing quickly. Well, our labor force is also changing very quickly. It's changing more than in the past for 3 reasons. The first one, and the most important one, is this graph. Is we have an aging population in Canada. Like for example, in Ontario, in the year 2000, 12% of the population were over 65. In about 10 years, 23%. people in Ontario are going to be over 65. The numbers are the same for Canada. It's actually 25% of Canadians who are going to be over 65 by the year 2030. That's amazing. That's twice as much as 10 years ago. So this is going to have a lot of impact on our communities, on our governments, on our economy. For example, just think about the healthcare system. The healthcare system was built when we were young. And now that we're going to, a quarter of the population is going to go over 65, well, the cost on the healthcare, for the healthcare system is going to be just amazing. I don't want to talk about this because I don't want to depress you. I'm going to just talk about the impact on business. And the impact on business is this graph. Our labor force, our pool of workers is not increasing anymore. It used to increase in Ontario by 2% every year. And now, because of the aging population, it's not increasing. Another way to explain it is 20 years ago, for each Canadian that was retiring, there was 2 young Canadians entering the workforce. Some of us who are a bit older remember that it was very easy to find young, very well-educated people to work for us. Well, today this ratio is 1-to-1. For each Canadian that is retiring today, there's only 1 young Canadian entering the workforce. So if you have difficulties to recruit people today, it's not because of you, it's because of this. Because we have an aging population, not as many young people are entering the workforce. And our pool of workers is not going to increase for the next 10 years. And actually Ontario is well positioned because in some provinces like New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, Quebec, the pool of workers is actually declining. In Quebec, for example, the number of workers today is less than last year. So you can imagine the pressure for people who are growing their business and they need workers. So that's the first big change for our labor force. It's going to be more difficult to hire people and more costly as well for the next 10 years. Second big impact is the new people on the labor force, 80% of them are going to come from outside this country. This is also going to change our labor force. Right now, 30% of workers in Ontario are born outside this country. In 10 years, it's 40% of our workers are going to be born outside this country. Finally, the last change is the composition of our labor force is changing. The baby boomers that we have been talking about for the last 20 years, well, they are leaving. They are leaving, they are retiring. They have already started, but in the next 10 years, the last baby boomers are going to be gone. And they're going to be replaced by what we call the millennials, the younger generation. 71% of the millennials are going to be composing the labor force. Why is this important? Why should we talk about it? Well, it's because they are different. And that's going to change the labor force. They are different because they're much more educated than the previous generation. They're much more connected, and they're much more tech savvy, which is all good. That's exactly what we need. As technology is changing quickly, we need this young workforce, very tech savvy, very connected. We need these people. But also, they have different expectations about the workplace. Because they're more educated, they believe that training should be part of the job. And they're right, but that's a different culture inside our businesses. They also focus much more on work-life balance than previous generation. And they want to work for a purpose. Salary is not the only goal. They want to work for a purpose. They want to grow in the business much faster. So millennials are different. And as business people, we have to realize that. So we have to realize that our labor market, our pool of workers is actually changing. It's going to be more difficult to attract them and retain them. A lot of new workers are going to come with a different background, coming from outside this country. And also millennials have different expectations. So we have to change the way we manage our human resources if we want to be successful in the future. So in conclusion, we are in the middle of this period of growth, both in Ontario, in Canada, and actually in the rest of the world. So this is a good spot to be in. We believe that this growth, this economic growth we are seeing, is going to happen, continue to happen, is going to be sustained for the next 2 or 3 years. So we are in a very good period. But at the same time, as business people, we're facing some challenges. Technology is changing very rapidly and is going to disrupt many of our sectors. So we have to think about what is going to be the impact of these changes for our own business. And second, our labor force is changing as well. So we have to think differently about how we hire people, how we retain our workers, because it's really going to happen in the next few years. So this is my presentation. I think we have time for questions. If you have any question, I would be happy to take them. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions for
Any
Pierre?
questions? Yes?
Here, I'm just wondering, do Alberta and BC settle their dispute anytime soon?
That's a very good question. I think it's going to be very difficult. I think it's more political than economics. You know, the issue for Alberta is they are able to produce more oil than they have infrastructure to get it out of the province. So if they cannot find pipelines, or if they don't, like if these pipelines are not built, they are going to limit the growth of the province. So this is a very big issue for Alberta. The reason why I say it's more political than reality is because, you know, British Columbia is saying, well, oil is bad for the environment. You can agree with that. But at the same time, British Columbia is the #1 exporter of coal, which is probably the worst energy for the environment. And at the same time, their #1 export is wood, and they were cutting their forests very, very strongly. So is oil worse than that? As an outsider, I'm not sure. So I think it's a political debate, and frankly, we'll see. I'm not sure how they're going to solve this. But I think at the end of the day, they will find a way. But I think it's going to be very difficult. Yes.
I think that with NAFTA, what makes you think that if the Americans back out of NAFTA, that they will increase import tariffs dramatically?
The question, I'm going to repeat it because we don't have a microphone. What makes me think that if the U.S. back out of NAFTA, they wouldn't increase tariff on for Canadian? Well, the reason is because we import a lot of goods. So we can play that game as well. So let's say they put tariff on our steel or other metals that we export to the U.S. Well, we can put tariff on some of the things that we import from Americans. So obviously this is not something we don't want a trade war. But because the trade is so balanced, the two countries, we have some leverage. You know, we export for $400 billion, but we also import for $390 billion from the U.S. So we can hurt them if we want to. Obviously, we're a small country, so hurting Americans is a bit more difficult. But at the same time, we are an important importer for many of these states around the United States. And also, we have to realize that Mr. Trump, although everything he says, he cannot kill NAFTA by himself. He needs the Congress. And people in the Congress, they are elected in every part of the country. And they realize how important Canada is. So that's another reason why we are optimistic. We believe there's going to be a deal at the end of the day. Yes?
Talk about economic growth for the next 2 to 3 years. What do you see beyond those 3 years?
Well, it's very hard to predict beyond 2 or 3 years, but we see a slowdown. Not a recession, because there's no unbalance in the economy. And also, following the last recession, for example, the financial system in the US is facing much more regulation. So what happened last time couldn't happen today. Doesn't mean that there will never be another recession, but the financial crisis we had coming from the US couldn't happen because the regulations are much stronger. So the reason why we see a slowdown and not a recession is because we don't see any unbalance in the US economy. Consumer debt ratio is still very low, despite the growth of the last 7 years. Business debt is really very low, both in Canada and the US. So there's no, I think what we're going to see is the economy in the US is running at full capacity, and the fact that they are stimulating the economy, at one point they won't be able to find workers. And this is going to actually stop, reduce the growth. And salaries are going to increase, so we're going to see growth slowing down. But we don't think it's going to turn into a recession. So we should see growth, strong growth in 2020, 2021, and in 2021 or 22, we should start to see slower growth in the US. Yes?
So the addition of the tariffs on China will be a good thing for the U.S. economy or a bad thing for the U.S. economy?
Very good question. The threat right now is, Mr. Trump is saying we're going to impose $60 billion of tariff on China. I think what will happen is China will finally open their country to American companies, and the tariff will never happen. I think it's just a threat. China has been developing their country by exporting to the world. And of course, the US is the number one country in the world, and the number one economy in the world. So a lot of Chinese export is going to the US. So China has been very good to export, but they haven't been as good to open their country to other countries. And Americans have been complaining, and other countries as well, have been complaining about this a long time. But it's the first time that a president of the United States is really threatening them to take some action. So I think what is going to happen is China will finally open the economy a little bit more. Mr. Trump administration said they don't want to, they have a $207 billion deficit with China. They don't believe they can eliminate that, but they want to reduce it by $100 billion. And they don't want to stop Chinese to export to the US. They want more American companies selling to China. China is growing. There's a lot of opportunities, but it's very tough to do business in China. There's a lot of barriers, non-tariff barriers. So they want to eliminate that. And I think what Mr. Trump is doing, I'm not a big fan of Mr. Trump, but in this case, I think he's doing the right thing. I think he will be the first US president to really change the game with China, because his style, he has a different style than Mr. Obama, and it might work. I'm not sure, but it might work.
You talked about the benefits of technology. You mentioned two large companies that failed to invest in technology. Do you believe the rise of technology will have an impact on the unemployment rates that you mentioned? Because it seems like every time I watch the news, it's some company laying off thousands of workers because of the increase in technology. So I see that as a threat and eventually a slowdown. And ultimately, I think it leads to as well a specialized labor pool that is going to exist, and eliminating a lot of workers that may not necessarily have that skill set. So I just wanted your thoughts on that.
Yeah, everybody understood the question? Yeah. This is a very interesting question, and actually, I don't believe technology is going to replace workers, or is going to, the 2 points I want to make. First, when we look at the most growing firm in Canada, they are the one investing the most in technology, but they're also creating jobs because they are growing. Okay. So technology doesn't mean that you're not going to need workers. And we have a lot of companies in Canada who produce technology. So the workers you're going to lose on one side, you are creating other jobs on the other side. Like I was visiting a client of BDC in Barrie, Ontario, which is not that far from here. They manufacture robots, and they had 500 employees, and they were hiring all the time because somebody has to make the robots. So that's the first point. The second point is, you're right, that we will need more people with skills. And in that factory that I visited, there was nobody with no skills. They all have like a lot of skills. That's what the type of workers we're looking for. Right now, in Canada, the unemployment rate for people who have a college degree or more is 2%. The unemployment rate in Canada for people who have less than a high school degree is 11%. So that's the danger. You're right. That's exactly what is happening now. Technology means that you will need more skills to be able to find a job in the future. And the good news is in Canada, Canadians have more and more skills. Like the new generation has more skills than any generation before. What we need to do is we need to help more people to get skills. Right? For many reasons, some people graduate with less than high school degree. Well, we need to help them to go back to school. Or even if you are older, like 40, 45, 50, and you lose your job, we need to help people to retrain because we will need these skills. Like, because of our aging population, we need everybody to be able to work. And for the intimate, like for the personal, like you need to help them to retrain so they can readjust to this new reality. Technology is changing very rapidly, so it means that for Canadians, any Canadian, they will have to upgrade their skills all the time. That's the new reality. You know, that's the new reality for business. The business environment is changing much more quickly now, so we have to adjust to that. But that's also the reality for Canadians. You know, we will have to adjust in our lifetime. I'm older, but for younger people, they will have to adjust. Like in my generation, you went to school, and after that, you were done. You go to work, and you basically don't go back to. I actually went back to school, but most people don't go back to school for 30 years. In the future, for the new generation, people who are graduating now, they will have to upgrade their skill all the time because technology is changing so quickly, because our environment is changing so quickly. But there's a real danger here that we will leave some people behind because technology is changing so rapidly. So that's, you know, when I graduated as an economist, the only thing we learned at school was how to create jobs. Like that was the obsession of economists at that time, you know, to create jobs, the program to create jobs. And my first job was for the Ontario government in Toronto, and I was working on a program how to create jobs. But the next generation of economists will think differently. We have enough jobs. Actually, we don't have enough people right now. But we will have to do a better job at helping people to get more skills.
We're going to take a 2-minute break.
Toronto? All right. And again, thank you very much. It's nice to know that it seems sure and steady moving forward. We don't seem to see any major hurdles that I heard anyway. So, we've invited a group of professionals with us this morning, all respected experts in their field. I'll introduce them in a minute. Certainly they have an in the know about what's happening in and around the town of Shelburne. We've also put together a series of questions, and I'm going to suggest that they are what I'm going to call on-the-street questions. Some of the things that you overhear, that we overhear if you're in an arena lobby or perhaps being debated as court is held each morning at local establishments like Pete's Deli. Joining us this morning is Sharon Grant with Royal LePage Realty. Sharon is a member of the President's Gold, Diamond, and Platinum Club, and was my neighbor at one point in time. I think her first mission when she got her license was to move. I'm not sure why, Sharon, but Steve Weaver is affectionately our town planner. He's with GSP. They are contract consultants for the town of Shelburne. GSP are a group of professionals who work with communities and clients to plan and design great communities that are both livable and sustainable, and I'm sure that that's something you'll find that these panel members share, is the desire to create sustainable growth and prosperity for the town of Shelburne, my town, your town, our community. Also with us this morning is Stephen Burnett from S. Burnett Associates Limited. They're contracted municipal engineers for the town of Shelburne. Espernet Associates Limited are a very established consulting firm that delivers project management and consultation services for projects undertaken by municipalities, First Nation communities, home and business owners. They have over 30 years of experience in infrastructure design, capital planning, life cycle cost analysis, environmental assessment, and public consultation services. We also have with us this morning Andrew Kotz. Andrew is Director of Market Research with Tribute Communities. Tribute Communities is one of our newest builder developers in town, over 30 years of experience, and have built more than 30,000 homes, I believe, Andrew. And I know that you mentioned you went live with our newest development, Highland Village, east end of town on Saturday. And despite the weather, there was rather significant turnout, as I understand. And also joining us this morning is our Honorable Mayor, Mayor Ken Bennington. Ken, we're going to put you last today because we saved the tough questions for last. And you'll notice that there's flashlights on the table in case we experience yet another power outage. So to begin with, I think that Pierre very much touched on this in his presentation earlier, but Sharon, the headlines of the Financial Post from the end of January this year, Toronto's soaring market dropped dramatically in the summer months of 2017, a trend that the Real Estate Board attributed to the psychological impact of the Ontario government's Fair Housing Plan, which is some of what Pierre touched on. Introduced in April, the plan includes, of course, tax on foreign buyers and rent controls, higher interest rates is something that Pierre mentioned, tougher qualifications. Are those changes slowing down the market for us here, Sharon and Shelburne?
Well, something sure did slow it down. Last year was a wild year, but by the end of the year it had slowed down considerably. And as I said, the foreign buyers tax, it's really, even they're having trouble measuring like who's a foreign buyer. And by the beginning of the year, they thought in the Golden Horseshoe area that 3.2% of buyers were foreign. And by the end of the year, they thought that was down to 1.9%. And there seems to actually be some talk that maybe they're mixing up foreign buyers and immigrants. A lot of immigrants buy real estate. I think some of them come in with a bit of money and they put it down in real estate and invest in that. So I think, and I don't think that, so those numbers, 1.9%, if that applies to Shelburne, isn't really doing much. It really isn't slowing down our market. Probably our market is slowing down more because of the stress test and financing. It used to be, even now you can get a mortgage rate of 2.89% variable rate. And if you want to qualify for that, you have to make, the average price of a house in Shelburne is about $485,000 right now. The average price to buy that house, you need $100,000 in income to buy that house, 2.89%. But if you have to qualify at a 5% rate, which you do right now you have to be making $125,000. So that's $25,000 of income is substantial. So I think it is slowing it down. And even if you've got a bit more money, you've got the you want to buy, people like new homes. They want to buy something a little bit newer. Our newer homes are probably about $550,000. So even if you've got the 20% down, you've got $110,000. You're still having to make $123,000 to afford that home. So I think that's it right there. I think that's where our slowdown is coming from. Plus, we had a phenomenal year last year. So it's not really fair to compare last year to this year.
Thanks very much, Sharon. And just to mention to the audience, certainly if there are some of the things that we don't touch on up here that you have, we'll do our best to field as many questions as we possibly can following, respecting, of course, our schedule and your time this morning. Steve, the Ontario government, there was an announcement, I don't know if it goes back to 2016, about expanding what they call the green belt, the 810,000 acre protected lands by close to 50%. Is that going to have an effect on us, or where do we continue to grow?
That's a good question, Mike, and you mentioned that Tribute just this past weekend has opened their sales office. So really the next wave of growth in Shelburne will be similar to the source of growth in the past several decades, and that will be traditional subdivision development. We have seen a little bit more intensification and redevelopment within the existing urban area, but increasingly the emphasis will be on redevelopment going forward. And one of the reasons for that, as you touched on, Mike, is this Greenbelt plan that the province is planning to expand to include the area surrounding Shelburne. So for a number of years now, going back to 2006, the province has been increasingly changing the emphasis for future growth and development to redevelopment within existing communities, growing upward instead of outward. And this has an important impact for small towns like Shelburne, where we don't see large high-rises or apartments or that kind of thing being the market demand here, or really what would fit with the character of the town. So increasingly over time, as subdivisions build out and as the next wave of growth starts to fill up, which happens very quickly here, as we've seen, there will be a lot of pressure to be more creative and find different ways to plan for growth here in Shelburne. I really see three key things that will be influenced by things like that Greenbelt expansion, the agricultural mapping that's been identified around Shelburne, and all of those trends and policies that will limit outward expansion. Firstly will be that we'll have to find new ways to grow upward. What does that look like in Shelburne in 15, 20, 25 years? How high should buildings be? Where should that be located? How do we manage impacts related to traffic and that sort of thing? Certainly the downtown core is one area of focus, and undertaking a community improvement plan will go a long way to help remove some barriers to allow that kind of growth to happen in the future. The second, and this ties to some of the broader economic trends that were discussed this morning, is that we're seeing a greater mix of business and residential uses together. One of the reasons for that is that retailers increasingly rely on having people who can walk and bike and access their stores in close proximity, because they're competing with an entire online retailing system that's drawing drive-to shopping malls down as a traditional model. In fact, we're seeing some shopping centers that were built in the 50s and 60s now are moving to have residential towers built over them because they need that to sustain the retail stores within them. And then finally, the emphasis, of course, is how do we move people around with this continued growth? Increasingly, the province expects communities to plan for people to walk and bike through their daily needs and not always have to get into the car. That has a lot of benefit in terms of reducing environmental impacts, reducing traffic, saving people time and money. But there is some challenge in that people aren't always choosing where they live based on where they work. There are more opportunities to work from home, and the more we can mix land uses together, the greater that opportunity will come about. And of course, eventually over the longer term, as we know, the province is really trying to make sure that people have access to public transit services as well. Right now, the pressure for that in Shelburne is to move people between Shelburne and other communities where they work. But over the long term, there will be, especially with the aging population and fewer people owning cars, a demand for local transit service. And that could start maybe with something small scale, but it's something that we've started planning for, thinking long term for the town's needs.
Thanks very much. Well, certainly population creates demand. So, that kind of leads into my next question for Stephen Burnett, our contract engineers for the town of Shelburne. And I know that we hear it quite often, but Stephen, do we have sufficient servicing for the future of what Shelburne looks like?
Yeah, that's a question that comes up quite a bit, and to be fair, it kind of has two answers to it. The town has invested significantly in water services in the past, and when you think of servicing, most people usually think of water and sewage servicing as the critical ones. Obviously transportation and other ones come in as well. So from a water perspective, council and the staff have really been proactive, and there was significant investments and some input from government over the past years that have put that situation in a very good position. From the sewage or wastewater perspective, there's also been good planning. There's been initiatives for reducing infiltration, really reducing that clean water getting into the system. So right now, the way the town sits today, it's just over 70% use of the sewage plant, which puts the town in a good position from that perspective for the planned growth that has been working alongside with the planning group, and really where where things are moving forward. To be fair, a good portion of that has been allocated to some of these developments that will come forward over the next couple of years. And as we said, one sales office opened on the weekend. So again, it's been a planning perspective that way for it. Taking that forward, our group is actually working with the town on both the environmental and engineering studies for what does the next 20 years look like. So we're partway through, about halfway through both EAs for water and sewage, and that's really with the goal of looking forward and staying ahead of the planning perspective, staying ahead of the growth, and really seeing what will have to happen to be able to move the town for the next 20 years. And we're in the middle of that process.
Great, thank you very much. And when you talk about continuing development, again, Andrew Cox, market research of Tribute Communities, is here with us this morning. And Andrew, again, I know that you've got Highland Village open. What does the town look like from a developer's perspective as you move it forward?
Well, future certainly bright. Judging by Saturday's turnout, given the weather, our sales office was jam-packed. Wrote a lot of deals. Saw a lot of faces here that actually came by on Saturday. We had to shut down on Sunday due to the weather, but then the week it picked up once again. In terms of the future, Shelburne looks fantastic. A lot of master plan communities in the pipeline. It's just a function of the GGH and the GTA new home market with the Greenbelt coming in, restricting the amount of land for redevelopment. Forcing the supply of low-rise oriented housing down. The average price for a new low-rise home in the GTA is $1.2 million. And that's a result of amount of inventory. There's 3,600 low-rise housing available for sale. Backtrack 9 or 10 years ago, that number was 15,000. So as mentioned, the government policy to grow up as opposed to out is restricting the amount of new supply, which is increasing price and forcing buyers to basically to drive to qualify to purchase a new home. And at one point every new home was a new home, and a lot of people are willing to pay for a new home in terms of premium. And Shelburne hits all those requirements in terms of businesses and community, and this place is jam-packed at 6:30 in the morning. A lot of passion and culture here, and Shelburne certainly hits home from a tribute point of view. And I'm very excited to build great quality homes here.
Thank you very much. Just out of curiosity, was the town easy to work with?
You want the truth? No, we'll play nice here. Shelburne was fantastic. Usually there's 3 key measures that attributes to working with a town or municipality. One is solid leadership, certainly shown here. 2 is the ability to show direction, and 3rd is execution. All of these items were shown here, and very excited about building here.
Great, so kudos to our mayor, our councillors. I know that we have Steve Anderson and Wade here with us today, so if there's any real tough questions, we'll direct them that way. And to the staff of the town of Shelburne, dedicated staff, thanks very much for everything that you guys do every day. Before I move on to Mayor Ken, are there any questions from you, questions on topic of economic development that you might like to ask these panelists this morning, from anybody? No? So finally, yes, Ed?
I just wondered if the plaza at the east end of town is going to happen, because it's kind of been promised, it would be promised back when I was mayor, and it's kind of like salvation. It's going to happen someday, but we're not sure when. I wondered if you could clarify that.
It still is progressing, yes.
Is this the year that it's realized?
And I absolutely expect that you are going to have the opportunity to make a retail purchase sometime soon. I don't know if we have a better answer. Ken?
I'll look
Stephen,
enough
yeah.
to answer you.
Yeah, so there has been an application filed by Fieldgate. They're the owner of the property. Of course, the timeline to move that application forward has very much been influenced by the required highway improvements on Highway 89. They're working very closely with the Ministry of Transportation to get the new intersection approved and designed and built. Everything is sort of dependent on that timing. We do have a public meeting coming up on Monday night at Council where this application will come forward for the first public review of it and taking comments and feedback. At this point, they haven't identified the layout of their site plan design. It is a kind of subdivision application, so just sort of a block of land identified for commercial development on the site. The expectation, of course, is that the timing of the development will see both commercial and residential happening together. And that will happen over the next, hopefully starting over the next couple of years. They have already started the site work, and I know they want to be up and running with their first year of operations in 2019 for their major retailers.
Thank you. So the short answer was the check is in the mail. Anything else? Again, I appreciate the fact that we're running a little behind, and certainly we respect your time this morning. Kathy?
With all this building going on and whatnot, and we talk about the aging community here, are there any, I know we have like the condo unit and it has a waiting list. Is there any condos coming into these new areas in the near future? Because we have a lot of our aging community moving out of the area to be able to get a condo where there's no, no maintenance, that type of thing. So I'm just wondering, is there any condo units coming into the area?
Stephen?
Yeah, a plan was just approved, a draft approved plan by council in March for a 58-unit condo development. It would be street-oriented townhomes. It's at Main Street East, just east of the Besley Drain. And that developer is currently working with a builder to identify more detailed plans and develop the timing for that. We also have an application in process for 40 more similar condominium townhouse units at Gordon Street and Main Street. It's a Stone Ridge development. That application is in process, and we expect to bring that forward to a public meeting in May.
Yeah.
Are any of those units going to be geared to one-level living?
At this point, the 600 Main Street, the one at the Besley Drain, they are planning to build 2-story units. Now, they did indicate that although those may not be geared to people looking for a bungalow or 1-story, they are trying to create a unit type or finishes that will be geared more to adult lifestyle or early retirement lifestyle. The Stone Ridge development hasn't yet identified what those units will be. I think they're just sort of testing the market right now. Because that type of unit really hasn't been built here yet, I'm getting a sense from builders in the community that maybe they're uncertain of the demand. They're still wanting to make it flexible because the demand has been very strong for young families and commuters moving into town. What we're trying to impress on them, of course, is that we need a variety of housing for all ages. And that although we can't enforce that kind of thing, we want to make sure that people who already live in the community have an opportunity to stay in it.
Thanks very much. Anything else from anybody? If not, we'll put a wrap to this. One final question then to Mayor Ken, if I may. Will spring ever get here, Ken?
Hey, good morning. I'm Shelburne Mayor Ken Bennington. We're here at the EDC breakfast, the annual breakfast here at the Shelburne Legion. And there's been lots of conversations with business leaders and bankers and real estate agents and that kind of thing. And one of the questions that I had was some comments regarding rapid growth. And is the rapid growth good for Shelburne? And I wanted to share that answer with you. And since being mayor, I no longer sleep at night. And so I was up late last night just pouring through the StatsCan results as a cure for insomnia. I just want to touch on a few things, if you don't mind. And that is, 17 years ago I started as a counselor in the town of Shelburne, just trying to invest in my community and do a little good. So I went back to 2001, which is the population in 2001, when I started this venture, was 4,122. Today's population, according to census results, is 8,126. So the town has essentially doubled in size since I joined council. I don't consider myself to be that old, but holy smokes. In 2001, the growth was 8%. In 2016, the growth was 39%. And so the number of private dwellings in 2001 was 1,498. Today is 2,825. Median age is roughly stayed the same. It's 36.6 years of age, where before it was 36. The most impressive stat I could find on the StatsCan website was our visible minorities. And in 2001, we had 110 persons that were visible minorities in the town of Shelburne, and today we have 1,410. And that's the most impressive stat I could find in the town of Shelburne. So when you consider what happened back in 2000, as far as the town, and we're still talking about rapid growth, was in 2001 we were struggling to attract doctors, we were struggling to attract business, we were struggling to keep our dollars in Shelburne in terms of shopping and such. And today, in the last little while, we have roughly every 2 months, we have a new severance application for industrial land in our industrial park. And that land is sat untouched for many, many years, and today it's almost sold out. We have a new radio station today that we didn't have 17 years ago. And right now our local health team is second to none. We have over 6 doctors in the town of Shelburne. I'm meeting with them with their hub a little bit later today to discuss some new opportunities with them. We have an exciting opportunity on the corner of 89 and 124 for commercial investment. And I know the question was, is growth good for Shelburne? We have some growing pains right now, and I liken it to anybody, any homeowner. It's like buying your dream home, your Muskoka cottage, your favorite car, and putting your kids through college all at the same time. And so, yeah, we have some bumps in the road, but this didn't just start recently. This has been years of planning to get to this stage. We expected the growth. The only real surprise is how rapid it has been. And so I have confidence in my colleagues around the council table that we will embrace this growth, and I'm confident that we can work through the hiccups or the bumps in the road along the way. And we're certainly ready to embrace any new opportunities and challenges. And so I hope that answers the question. But yes, any growth is fantastic news for a small town.
Look, thank you very much for joining us this morning. Greatly appreciate it. Again, thank you all for joining us this morning. We have a quick awards presentation followed by our seminar on social media. So thank you. And if I might ask Mr. Bowles up to the stage, I believe.
Greg and Heather Holmes, please come up. It's my privilege to present the 2018 Community Builder Award to Greg and Heather Holmes. Not only have Greg and Heather grown up in the Shelburne area, they've raised their family here, all are running their local business, home appliance and music shop, side by side since 1981. Greg and Heather have strongly supported numerous clubs, service organizations, groups in the area, helping out whenever and wherever possible. It is the belief that Shelburne truly is the best small town in Ontario, which I can see you guys know that from all being here, so thank you. They have received many awards over the years, the Rotary International Paul Harris Fellowship recognition, as well as Shelburne Lions Club Citizen of the Year. Now, what I want to mention is a number of years ago, Greg and Heather saw the potential to develop a space worthy of hosting some events within the town of Shelburne. So in 2013, Greg and Heather hosted the first Picnic in the Park and Camping Weekend. Over the next few years, this event has grown, raising over $140,000. Thank you. Through their dedicated support to organize this unique event, Picnic in the Park now attracts not only the local townspeople, but visitors from all corners of Ontario. So these contributions have helped promote both economic development as well as the well-being of Shelburne. And I congratulate Greg and Hannah on the award. So thanks. We've got EDC and Shelburne community and great.
Thank you.
Thanks, and back to Craig.
That was just official color codes for your point inside. So, presenting a community engagement award for EDC colleague Shane Hall. On the stage, please.
Again, good morning, and as mentioned, I have the opportunity to present you the Community Engagement Award. So this is given to an individual or business who have made outstanding contributions to their community, and in doing so, have also enriched the lives of others. So each winner has set a high standard for community development, making a significant contribution of time and talent to support the town of Shelburne. So it is my pleasure this morning to present this award to Andrew James. He will receive the Community Engagement Award, and Andrew has lived in the town of Shelburne since 2015 with his lovely wife, Julia Ann, and their 3 lovely daughters. Andrew currently serves as the Executive Director of Streams Community Hub, a not-for-profit organization he co-founded with his wife. They're focused on helping youth to discover passion, their potential, and purpose through the arts. He also serves as a creative arts therapist at the Pine River Institute. Andrew's community engagement includes his participation as a committee member, helping to coordinate the 2016 Center Stage Shelburne Talent Show. He was also involved both on stage and off in the LP stage productions in the last 3 productions held here in Shelburne. He is also a member of the Parent Council at the Highland Heights Elementary School where his daughters attend. Andrew was a nominee also for the Dufferin Board of Trade Business Excellence Award in 2017, and more recently has become a leadership council member with the Headwaters Community in Action, a position that he does hope to raise the profile and advance the interests of Shelburne in this youth. So please, if we can have Andrew come forward.
Thank you, Shane. Thank you, Andrew. And again, your time is greatly appreciated this morning. We have 2 final awards. The next is a Public Service Award, and I'd like to ask Brian Besley to the stage, if I may.
Morning. The Public Service Excellence Award is a public service celebrates public servants who have demonstrated professionalism, integrity, strong ethics, and have contributed to the economic development of the community. As the former CAO and the clerk of the town of Shelburne, John Telfer provided leadership in many economic development activities. He always acknowledged that it was not one person, but a team that made a long-term success. Council, EDC committees, both present and past, have worked well together and focused on the bigger picture for this town. Our town is now the envy of many other towns that wish to have the growth experience that we've had in the last 2 census. Working for the town, providing opportunities not only to demonstrate economic growth in all 3 sectors, residential, commercial, and industrial, but also in life value opportunities and amenities for residents of all ages. In addition to the many town projects and programs, John also gave his personal time to the community in the form of the youth choir, community stage band, performing art governance, representative on the town of Headwaters Tourism and Dufferin Board of Trade, Canada Day representative for 12 years, and he was also known to be able to flip some mean pancakes for the children's breakfast at the Glenbrook Community School. It's with great honor that I present to John the Public Service Excellence Award. So this is kind of a two-pronged attack here. Unfortunately, John was not able to attend today due to previous engagements, but he did send a short thank you note. I'd like to read it. Many thanks for the acknowledgement of this award. I really appreciate my time in Shelburne working with the EDC team. Many thanks to the team for sharing the vision, commitment, and trust you had in our administration to carry it forward. I do not credit for this success, as it will always require a team effort. For that, I share this award with all the people who I have the privilege to work with. The names change, but the success requires a strong formula for collaboration with partners and the investment community. I appreciate working with so many developers over the years and having them confident with their investment following the vision of the town. Many thanks to the present and past council, EDC committees, and the town administration for the support and the hard work to make Shelburne the fastest growing community in Ontario for the past 8 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian, and certainly thank you, John. Presenting a Business Excellence Award, Linda Ward-Grant, if I might ask you to the stage, please.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, the award I'm going to present is called the Business and Community Excellence Award. This award is given to an individual or a business who have contributed to the fabric and growth of our community. Their entrepreneurial spirit, leadership, and best business practices exemplify the meaning of community. The award recognizes those who have helped move our community and economic vision forward. The recipient of this award is not here today. Unfortunately, she's away. She didn't send me her bio, so I stole this off the Dufferin Board of Trade's website, and this is what I'll read to you. It's Jamie Lee Higgins from Prim Pickens. Prim Pickens has supplied both the wholesale and retail industry with quality handmade furniture and home decor, catching the attention of companies like Home Hardware, Leighton Drugs, Green Wolf Lodge, Home Sense, Hallmark, and more. Jamie Lee grew her business from a small hobby to an industry-leading manufacturer. After landing a deal with Dragon Michael Wickley on CBC Dragon's Den, she later declined the offer off-air and has continued to lead her dreams with the help of her family and friends. Prim Pickens and Jamie Lee have gained respect and admiration in the community and can often be found behind the scenes providing volunteer and donation efforts for local charities, events, and fundraisers in the community. Now, we all know Jamie Lee's from Langton, where I'm from, but we love Shelburne, and we come here because we want to give back to the community. So this award goes to Jamie Lee Higgins of Prim Pickens. She's not here to accept.
I'm not here on behalf of accepting anybody's. And finally this morning, again, thank you very much. Appreciate your time. Our Community Champion Award, and Tammy Austin, if I might ask you to the stage, please.
Good morning, everyone. The Community Champion Award recognizes the time and effort of a volunteer and the significance of their contribution to making Shelburne a better place. It is with my pleasure that we present Lindsay Wagner with the Community Champion Award. Lindsay has been a resident of Shelburne for almost 15 years after falling in love with the small town and its community It's that love of community that allowed her to begin her volunteer efforts, initially signing up to assist with the Fall Fair in 2013, then hosting charity vendor events to benefit local scouts, the Shelburne Street Festival, Soapbox Derby, and the local children's nonprofit fastball organization, the Junior Schooners. In addition to donating her time, she also gives to local school and event fundraisers and is a Brownie leader to Shelburne's first Brownie Squad. Congratulations, Lindsay.
To all of our award winners, this will officially see an end to our annual EDC breakfast. I want to again thank you very much for your time and consideration this morning. I recognize that everybody has a busy day. You're here because you care about what happens for the future of the town of Shelburne and the surrounding area. For that, thank you. Have a great day. For those that are sticking around, remember that we have our seminar with to all of our award winners. This will officially see an end to our annual EDC breakfast. I want to again thank you very much for your time and consideration this morning. I recognize that everybody has a busy day. You're here because you care about what happens for the future of the town of Shelburne and the surrounding area. For that, thank you. Have a great day.